So what happens is the Zoom plays simultaneously with this, and I have to mute it, otherwise we get feedback. And as soon as it does that, and it's on like a 20-second delay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Good. So we are live on YouTube, and I will just press record. All right, we're ready. Okay, all of the logistics are handled. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. It is a cold and blustery evening in Northern California. So thank you for joining us this evening. We're so thrilled to have Gail Minogue with us. I've known Gail for a little bit now, and so many people in FMBR I know with her, work with her, know her work. She is based in Los Angeles. She's a professional who reveals the symbolic relationship of numbers to our life and experience. Her specialty is in integrating real-world experiences with holistic inner teachings. She's a licensed commodities broker and has studied and utilized ancient sciences of numbers and patterns for 25 years. She has a number of books, one called Divine Design, How You Create the Life You're Living, now in its third edition with expanded content. And The Invisible System. Gail, is that out yet, or is that in
That
preparation?
is stalled because of me.
Oh, okay.
I have stalled that.
It's coming. So
yes, stay tuned.
yes. So I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us, especially in these times. I know people have a lot of anxiety up about a lot of change, a lot of transition that seems to be going through. And I love how you talk about how you can zoom out, right, and see patterns to maybe maybe relieve some anxiety for us. So I am going to turn this over to you.
Okay.
Let us know what you want to say, and then I will mute, and I'll come back when you're done, and we'll do questions and answers.
Okay, excellent. So what would you figure, maybe 45 minutes or so, or how long you think? What's
45 minutes to an hour, and then maybe 15 minutes for discussion.
Okay, because usually people have, last time I did a talk, it was at least a half an hour of Q&A, and but we'll see.
So maybe stop at 45 minutes, and we'll see how
we'll see how it goes. Anyway, so thank you everybody for joining me tonight. I really appreciate your presence because we're all given a certain amount of time, and that's it, and we can't get it back. So thanks for investing it with me tonight. And I'm going to just give you an intro to my background, regardless of commodity broker. Years and years ago, I'm still licensed, but I just don't trade. But what it did give me is a perspective on cycles, and everything is cycles and numbers. And even the Bible tells you your days are numbered. So we want to take a look at everything as patterns, cycles, timing, all ruled by the heavens. And so, Pythagorean math, Pythagorean theorems, everything is in order, even, everything has a name. So it's something where your days are numbered, and so are you, and so is this country, and so is every city, so is every corporation. Many years ago, back in the 80s, I had moved to Houston, Texas, to open an office for the company that was not nearly well known as it became, which was Sprint. And they opened an office, and at that time, communication was so totally, it's like primitive compared to today. You had dial-up, and you had a long distance between cities, and cheaper rates and corporate rates, and it was very different. So I was sent there, and my head was in the place of, solid single mother doing whatever you have to do. I just bought a house, and I had a visit one night, and I wasn't looking for my astrological sign. I didn't know, I didn't care. And so I had none of this preconceived notions or studies. And I had a visitor one night, and it was like a priestly figure. And I was instructed to study Pythagoras and Zen. And I thought, this is absurd. And I went around looking for a book called Pythagorean and Zen. And of course, that didn't exist. Plus, it's not the correct pronunciation of Pythagoras. Anyway, it's Pythagoras. And that was my introduction to sacred geometry. And from that visit, which will shake you very much, I had other situations that I would never talk about because people think I would be nuts. And I remember my world was, very mainstream and do your mortgage, go to the games and do that kind of stuff. But on the side, I was studying and learning, and that exposed me to many what I would call today ancient teachers that are no longer alive, but I was blessed to have them run across my path and be exposed to them before they left. And so I gathered a lot of my information early, and then you go through these phases of the 80s and 90s and a lot of new age stuff and a lot of, I called it woo-woos, but you never really get to the underlying issue of what's going on here at this level of, we'll say, consciousness on the earth plane, and how does it fit with the bigger transits and everything going on in the universe, and that we're all timed as in our own life. We have a blueprint. When we come in, we have a blueprint. We create it before birth. It's in your name. It's in your date of birth. Everybody needs to know what the heck their blueprint is so they can live a more fulfilled life, not run around so scared. And so we all have that. I've done this many times, looked at a corporation, looked at its blueprint when it was incorporated, tell you all about it, whether it's going to do well, whether the timing was good or not good. Same with an employee joining a company, firing a person. All these kinds of things are there if you really understand the numbers and the letters and the cycles. So every city has a blueprint, every person, every country. The United States was born on July 4th, 1776. Therefore, it has a 5 life path. Anybody in numerology pretty much probably knows that America is a 5. So America had its program coming in of being a catalyst of change to initiate the Aquarian age. When you go through the cycles of what we'll call the great year or the Yorga, which is 24,000 years, you will see there's ages ascending and descending on this circle calendar. And we have, within a period of time, so many thousands of years in each cycle. In this cycle are constellations. So you would say, when you came in, when you reincarnated, you would reincarnate under a certain constellation, as did this country. And it ushered into the age of Aquarius through the constellation of Aquarius. Each one of us goes through a constellation, sounds way out, when we're born, okay? And so we need to really understand that we don't belong here. We're here, we're learning, we're going to leave. And so you don't get too attached here. So when you're coming in and you're birthing a country like the United States on July 4th, 1776, to usher in a 2,000-year period of the Aquarian age, you have an assignment and it has a purpose. And the bigger purpose of this country was always to learn to assimilate, be a catalyst of change for the entire globe. And so you watch what happened over the last 250 years, 240 years, as you see America as the catalyst of change for the world, and also having to learn to assimilate, which is one of the modern day challenges we have. We try to get rid of all these immigrants, However, this whole country is one big old mix of immigrants. So we have to learn to assimilate. That's our job. And then market our assimilation to the rest of the world so they can assimilate, because there's a bigger goal for the whole thing, which is, in this age of Aquarius, is assimilation. So each group around the globe will be affected by this. So right now, we would like to say, well, gee, nothing's going to happen. Look at us. We're fighting and fearful. This is just a transit. And I want to impress upon you these cycles. When America was born, let's go back to 1780. And if we go back to 1780, we go back to where we just started as a country. We're very young. We're kind of immature. We're a five. Fives just want to move. Five is the moving number. It's in the middle of all numbers 1 through 9. And has the ability to be a catalyst of change. That's the job of this country. And you have chosen, or somehow you got here, to be part of this. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You would go pick Somalia where you'd have an abbreviated life and you just reincarnate for so many years and that's it and get out. So you came here and to help be a catalyst of change for the world. So it's a bigger picture, which people don't really, I just want to pay my mortgage. That's what they're interested in. Excuse me. So this job of the United States, which started in 1780, has two big cycles. One is the 5, which is a 50-year period. So every 50 years, there's a major change and a reconfiguration of how do we go forward. So anytime it goes through one of these periods, it closes off the prior 50 years and starts a new cycle. But the 10 years, say the 40th year from 40 to 50, is pretty chaotic. And that's what you're in right now. You're leaving the Reagan era of 1980, which was the beginning of a 50-year cycle. And you're closing the 50-year cycle of the Reagan era during the 2020s. So what's going to happen here? I don't care I didn't like either one of these candidates. They're not agents of change. They're not visionary. They're all going to try to lead the future by looking at the past, and it will not work. So it's going to be somewhat chaotic and challenged all through the 20s. But gradually, one of the funny characteristics of America is that it almost destroys itself before it creates something new and better. So if you look at the pattern, it's like the sun comes up every day, every 50 years, here we go again. So the last time we went through this, you can relate, is the 1970s. Okay? So the 70s were very chaotic, and I have a little paragraph I want to read to you. Hopefully I got the right thing. Okay, to understand the coming changes, which are the 2020s now, it's useful to think of the last cycle of the 70s. The decade was marked by a war with significant impact on the American economy, combined with an oil embargo. President Nixon ended the link between the dollar and the gold. Massive unemployment, dramatic inflation, staggering high interest rates. Exports from Japan shocked the domestic auto manufacturers. Anger at the Vietnam War was social conflict, racial conflict. And in the 1970 campus riots at Kent State, where the National Guard killed shot the 4 students to death and injured 9 others. And so in the end, the president resigns. It was a very chaotic period. And it drove, the chaos was rooted because the president at that period was trying, which was Carter, was trying to take care of the problems looking backwards, fixing this from 40 years before. So Trump is going to go backwards and he's going to look at, how do we fix this? Well, we will, put tariffs on, we'll do all these things that are, no. They don't take us forward. And so you kind of have to just put up with it, really. But know you're going to come out of it. So plan your life accordingly, that it's chaotic. We're going to get to the 2028. We're going to have a look-see on the improvements going forward, but not till we get through that. So 2029. So you want to take a period, and inside this cycle are other cycles, and this cycle that's so challenged really started, you ready for this? In 2015. And that's exactly when, Trump decided he would run. So we have another transit that's affecting us 2015 to the early part of 2030. So America is squeezed, and she will go through chaos because the president will look backwards to fix the future, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So I don't care who got elected. If Kamala Harris got elected, she would have the same problem. She would try to fix the future using old old tools. So you're going to see a lot of kind of scary stuff. Don't be too scared. This all passes. We've been through this so many times. If I took you back to the Great Depression, if I took you back to, we came out of the Civil War. We always go through a period where we almost destroy ourselves every 80 years, or we get destroyed. So if you go back to 1780 and you go forward with the 8-year cycle, because America has a prominent 8 in her chart. She's 5 and 8. And so every 80 years, every 50 years, there's this gigantic cycle. We had from 1780 to 1860, then we had the Civil War, where we almost destroyed ourselves. And you go back, and then you go, but then what did we have? We had the Great Industrial Revolution in 1880 forward. And then we had World War II, another 80-year period where we had a great war. And again, the test of everything. And we came out of that and we started this magnificent ride of being the winner of the world and our big manufacturing, everything. Well, that period too is right on the heels of the 50-year cycle. So they're both coming together, which makes it double whammy. So I don't know what will come about, say, the end of the 20s. But I would just be very wise in handling my money. I would be wise in under consuming and less consumption. Do you really need it? So we're in a bigger scheme, because everything is in these cycles. Whether we have a war or whether we have some other kind of, maybe a climate crisis, something that is going to bring us together. No matter what, the climate is affecting, whether it's admitted. Again, Trump is going to go backwards to try to fix backward problems. So he's an interesting candidate. He's a smart man, although he may not seem it, but he's got very, very poor competency as far as about himself. And it goes back to his father, but that's a whole nother thing. I've done his chart. And years ago, I had to do an article about him, and I had to get in touch with his staff at the time, which was all in New York. And it was interesting experience, a very interesting experience. And so you understand there's this giant 24,000 years, great year cycle. There's also the constellation age that we're born into, or individually born into. I'm born into this under the constellation Aquarius, and the United States is born in the constellation of Cancer. And one of the things that's very true of a Cancerian energy is home and ownership of home. So to put the American public out of reach of owning their homes was really very negative. Things have gotten really out of hand in that area. Housing is huge, especially for those who are in a country that is cancer-led. We want to develop home ownership and feeling secure in the home situation, and we have ignored it. And so what we have going on is currently, which is part of this chaos, is the revolt. We're having the revolt of the citizens. And you saw it in this election. It was really a revolt. And one of the things was said by, of all people, George W. Bush. It was in a book. It was an interview book by David Rubenstein, The Highest Calling. And he had 21 interviews. And he interviewed President George Bush. And the moment that he said in the book, comes in a conversation with former President George W. Bush. He offered a simple diagnosis of the current political moment. And you quote, "You wonder why populism is on the rise. It starts with taking taxpayers' money and giving it to the powerful." And so in order to make change, you have to have these institutions collapse, break apart, change. That's what's going on. So you're seeing the institution of higher education come about. You're seeing of changes and collapse. You're seeing the medical field having to be forced to make changes because it's so owned by private equity firms now, and nobody knows what's going on with private equity firms. So you have, it's down the, all your sacred, institutions, and you're watching these, what I would call actors, performers, that are filling up cabinet positions. Basically, many of them are Fox television stars, or what we'll say guests, or however you want to call it. So one of the things about empires, and America is an empire, is when we come to an end of a period of time of an empire, it's the sixth stage. And what happens is the politicians become performers. And that's the sixth stage of the ending of an empire. And so the America has to go through a lot of change till the 2030s, when she can change these things, and they will be changed. They are being changed. He's a catalyst of change. Trump has a 5 destiny, meaning his whole name. The name is your destiny. So he is a change, and he doesn't care. He just really doesn't care, except down deep, he has low self-esteem, very low self-esteem. That is why he demands loyalty over competency. He demands loyalty. I don't think he ever could please his father, and he still works from a point of trying to do that. So it's interesting how we play out our own blueprints in our lives, and how the country plays out its blueprint. So we have converging right now these big 80-year cycle and the 50-year cycle, and you're seeing the chaos every day. You're seeing the social media take over the normal institution of the press. And again, you're watching these congressional hearings take apart the higher education. What we did with World War II, we became the country of experts, and people don't want experts right now. They don't want experts. They don't want to listen. They don't trust. They don't. And so this is part and parcel of the chaos, just like we do through the 70s. And we had another period, which was the 1930s, and which took you to the beginning of the Reagan era. And the 30s were challenged because it was the beginning of the Great Depression. So the 20s were crazy before that period began. So it's nothing unusual. It's just living through it is really tough. And that's kind of why we have to remember a bigger picture, that we're here for 2 big reasons, every single one of us: to learn emotional energy, to work with it, and to make free will choice. So make good choices. And that's basically why you're reincarnated. You have to get these 2 things. Working with emotional energy, so everything has emotional charge, and also making choices. And so many times I have people will come to me and they do the meditations and they want to be guided and shown, but they don't choose. See, our job here is to choose. The invisible world shows you how, but we concentrate always on the how, and we don't really go very far, or we're just flustered. And understand too that a blueprint is really long. It's 120 years. It isn't 65, which is really sad, because that's an artificial man-made time frame, and we're not supposed to retire ever. The soul doesn't come here to retire, but it didn't come here to just do a menial job that it hates. I mean, if it loves the job, then that's different. But it wasn't to burn yourself out and then collapse after age 66. And so you want to have a blueprint for the first 30 years, the next 30 years, the next 30 years, the next 30 years. So when you leave about 120, you just haven't suffered all through it. And so it's learning how to work with the invisible world, which is key. So we have, each one of us has a blueprint. A corporation, a city has a blueprint. I could tell you a lot about the difference in this city and that city, and why you would not really want to go there, or yes, why you would want to go there, because it has its own blueprint. So the thing about the period that you're in is that we're very polarized right now. And this is what happens in a period where you're ending a 50-year cycle. You had a lot of polarization in the 70s. And so will the left and right come together? Yes. but you've got to go through the 20s first. So you're going to see more of that, because what's going to happen is, as drought happens, storms, all these things happen, food supply changes, you start disrupting employment of immigrants. Who's going to do our butchers? Who's going to do our pick our tomatoes? Who's going to be working at the nursing homes? It's very short-sighted. How are we going to pay if we have tariffs put on? But these are tools that are from the past that didn't work then, and they're not going to work now, but you have to go through the gyration on. So one of the things that will happen is, this president was elected as very popular. And so what he does, which he did before, he will make himself unpopular. It's just, his sun comes up in the morning, he will make himself unpopular. And so that is part of the way we move on. Nothing stops. Everything is evolving here, and it constantly. So we kind of think we know so much, we hardly know anything. We're coming back. When you look at the big 24,000 year cycle, it's ascending and descending. You may already know this. And so we have the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, Iron Age, which is the Dark Age. So, and you try to go back up around the circle, and then you go from the Iron Age to the Bronze Age to the Silver Age to the Golden Age. Well, so what we are in is, we're kind of on the edge of the Iron Age, the Dark Age, going into the Bronze Age. So we don't know a whole lot. We have forgotten our prior Golden Age and Silver Age. We forgot. We don't remember. We don't know how to do the things that they used to do. So civilizations have come and gone that we're not even aware of here, that we're much more advanced than we are today. Now, we will become more advanced. So 2030 should be, there's going to be a lot of advancement within the next 10 years, particularly the 2030s, really fabulous. And the other thing too is, a lot of people are discouraged about the female. Well, the woman didn't run, didn't win, and but this period, or the year 2000, is 1,000 years. It's 22,000 to 2,999. So it's 1,000 years of the feminine energy rising to balance out the years of the male patriarchy. And so that takes time, and you want to allow it to play its course. A lot of people have written me, well, I thought she was going to win, where, the power of the. I said, women launched in the I Ching, which is the Book of Days. The I Ching launched her in 2024 to come into her big 20-year power years. And it's interesting because Pluto, the planet, shall we say, of death and transformation, just entered the sign of Aquarius yesterday. So Pluto, when they have the, what do you call it, the program on the inauguration on the 20th of January, Pluto's going to be a sign Aquarius. When he was elected, was in the sign of Capricorn of the past. So he's entering the future, trying to rule from the past. That's why it's not going to work. So he's not going to work. He's going to have a very hard time leading. And as much as he has all these bully pulpit people, there's going to be a lot of checks on him, stops on him, unexpected things. Plus, he's 78, he'll be 79. And I'm not saying that I'm older than he is, so what the heck. But anyway, so we have this Pluto in Aquarius, and we have the rise of the female, middle-aged female, or middle female of the family in the I Ching. And it's called the Li period, and she will be running the show for the next 20 years, just beginning now. So you're going to see more female, which is very, very good as we go more and more into the conscience of a society, which is really run by the female. The female is the conscience of society. And basically, men are afraid of the female because of that conscience. And she is, she sees through things, all that other stuff. So we're going to have this rise from the year 2000 to 2,999. And so the reasoning of this last election is that these candidates were geared to the past and it doesn't work. So we're kind of going forward with a handicapped president. But gradually we're going to heal. We're going to heal, because what's going to happen is people who are nature stepping in here, she's doing her dance. One of the things about Mother Nature, she's the boss, really. She gets rid of her drones, people who reincarnate and don't want to grow or do anything here. She gets rid of them through fires, through earthquakes, through floods, all kinds of, winds. She gets rid of them, and you're watching it happen periodically around the globe, getting rid of negativity. So Mother Earth cleanses herself with fire, floods, earthquakes, everything like that. And she gets rid of her negativity. If you don't really want to conform and you really ruin her, she will just sink you. So, which has happened. So it's a cleansing, but Earth is not going to be destroyed. She'll get rid of you first. So it's something where we have forgotten how to appreciate and to be grateful. We're not grateful. We consume. And it's really interesting that we've put ourselves into now sick bodies and all that. So we will work our way forward into a more harmonizing energy after we get out of the 20s. So kind of keep that in mind. One of the things that I didn't mention here is about the binary system of the stars. And this is possibility. The system created the downfall of ancient civilizations. And it has to do with this, with the sun's motion around a companion star, whose orbit is about every 3,000 years. So we don't really have anyone who sees this other stars, but about 82 to 85% of the stars have companion stars. So it would be most unusual that we didn't have a companion star, but the companion star would have its own orbit and we're kind of dragged along with it. So this orbit is operating all the time with us. And as this star goes closer into what I call the galactic center, it raises our consciousness so that we can reach and achieve the golden age that we talk about. And as it pulls away from that, and remember, we follow in this orbit. And so our sun is running around with the orbit of the other star as companion, and we're running around with the sun. So we get dragged through the whole thing, and it's what we'll call the magnetic field. And as we go further out away from the galactic center, we kind of decrease in our awareness, our consciousness, and everything else. The energy on the earth plane is what I call horizontal. The energy out of here, the different levels of consciousness, are vertical. So what we do when we leave here, we go to different levels of higher levels of consciousness. And so we want to really use our time wisely here. We only have 120 years, and most of us check out in their 80s because we just sort of fall apart because we didn't know. We were very ignorant of how to maintain our form, our body. And we didn't realize that, you're not going to get another one. That's the only one you have. I mean, it's like a racehorse. You had to take care of it right from the beginning. And if you now have reached a point where it's not working for you, figure out what you have to do and sacrifice other things to be able to take care of that, or you just won't be able to stay. That's how it works. And so, but as we travel through the heavens, this Yurga cycle, this 24,000 year cycle, is tied to the periodicity of the precession of the equinox. So the companion star is really the cause of the precession. And so it's reaching that galactic center that we're headed that way now. We had come down away from it, and we're headed that way now, which gives you hope. But of course, you're going to have many incarnations, whether you have them here or elsewhere, depending on the consciousness you leave here with and what you decide once you're out of here. And so we can, I don't want to go through the whole process of reincarnation and planning and all that stuff, because that's not what we're here today. It's just the fact that you do. and you put together a program and press this name upon your parents' subconscious to give to you so you can play it out in this lifetime. So you have a lesson, you have a road you're on, and you have a destiny, you have a personality, you have issues. It's all there. It's all there. And so we are in an ascending period. This period that we're in right now, and we're just kind of tiptoeing into it, will last about 4,099. And then we'll move to the Silver Age. So we have, where are we, 2024, 25? And so we can't visualize what we can do. But one of the things I think I mentioned that very important is that we're also learning, we're not aware of it, we're learning mental telepathy. That's one reason why we have these cell phones. Number one, the cell phone gets you to focus without talking to anybody. It also makes you very, like, you can be in a room, like if you notice anywhere you go now, everybody's on their phone. Whether there's people around or anything, everybody's on their phone. So what you're doing is learning to communicate without speaking. And you're also learning to abbreviate language so that you can use mental telepathy eventually to communicate with people anywhere. So this takes time, but this is part of the development. And we're humming up all these haha products and whistles and sing bangs and all that. But there is a purpose to it. And we are to achieve mental telepathy. It isn't that far away. But we first have to get through this period, get into the 30s before we can really understand much more about what we have, what we're capable of, and rather than this, going to the gym and pump an iron. It is so like ridiculous. But I mean, we need to take care of the body, but how we do it is another story. Just remember that you have a fine racehorse and you were always supposed to it would be your priority to take care of it. So this is, I mentioned a couple of things, and I don't know if this was followed up with my introduction here. It is, where do we expect? I think I've kind of explained where we expect the country's headed. It will come out. We will have breakthroughs in science, and you're going to see much more of them over the next 5 years. And be able to, so every year when you say, if you have this incredible disease, hang on another year, because more is coming that is going to have breakthroughs. So looking at everything, say in 2034, you will not recognize the country 10 years from now of what we are, where we are now. Remember, the United States, other than the Civil War, has never had a war on its soil. It never had to worry about somebody attacking it. We've never had to come together, except maybe World War II, when they bombed Pearl Harbor, did we even think about, uniting? And so now we're into our own little bubbles. The South is still living under the law of the Confederacy. It's still like a bunch of Confederate states. And so we're coming to a head on a lot of the stuff that, if you go back 80 years to World War II and the age of the experts, we're looking at experts now as, really, is he really an expert? But now we're going the other way, where anybody's, your opinion, and basically that's all it is, most people, they're believing it, but that is part of the problem and the challenge. And so the revolt of the citizenry is a real serious issue, but one that we need to disrupt our institutions to change them for the better. And that's going to look pretty awful while you're going through it. And that's what you're looking at right now. And a lot of fear, what's going to happen. And what's going to happen in Ukraine, what's going to happen in the Middle East. And all these things are just part of this chaos of the next, from 2024 to 2030. But the election will be a real bellwether for the future rather than the past. Right now, we're still dealing with the past issues. We're still dealing with Reaganomics and all this baloney. And it's like, ho-hum. Unfortunately, one of the things that has happened is we do have an elitist group and I don't know, I read something somewhere, they called it a caste system. I said, yeah, we do have a caste system here. We haven't called it that, but that's really what it is, where if you were looked down upon, if you were plumber, blue collar, or truck driver, or the person who came and fixed my electric stuff, I broke down my dishwasher. I know what I charged to get my washing machine fixed. I could have almost bought a new machine. And so we looked down upon all these blue collar things. We sent our manufacturing overseas because we could get cheaper labor. We had our people here teach them how to do it for us overseas and then let those people go. So we have these forgotten Americans, mainly in rural areas where towns have been forgotten, and it's finally caught up with us. And so what we're doing is looking at the past 50 years and what we did, and we created an elitist education system as well. And that is also breaking down. And so we have to go back to the Constitution and see where parts of it are just flat out being ignored or circumvented. But this is what we have to go through. We're cleaning up the last 50 years, ever since Reaganomics. The prior that, we cleaned up the prior 50 years through the 70s, and before that, the 20s. I just keep going right back and you'll see it. But the big 80-year cycle usually doesn't hit the same time. It's a 50-year cycle, and this time it is. So I don't know. I'm kind of, there should be some kind of event as we get closer to the 2030s that will trigger some of these big leaps of change for America. And it always ends up well. America has a super duper chart. She comes up smelling like a rose, but she almost kills herself to get there. And so there's no reason it will change and keep doing it, but it always looks, like people didn't think we'd get through the Civil War. And actually the Civil War is when we formed a more central government, the federal government took over. Because before that, it was all a bunch of states. But once we had the Civil War, it became the power of the federal government was solidified. And then once we won World War II, the power was solidified again. So here we are, okay? And we just have to really see what will be this event, whether it's a war, a famine, climate, something, I don't know, something that will unite. And by the time the 20s, 30s, something there. So it isn't all negative. It just has to be worked on, and it hasn't been. And there's not the person to do it is this president. So if he applies tariffs, if it could make things more expensive, I don't know if he will. I think there'll be a fight about it, but they usually are a no-win game because then the other countries do the same. So it would make it very expensive for people. So we have to see. But right now, we don't know enough, except it's challenging and somewhat chaotic. There's also a pattern that I had mentioned that every 500 years there's a Renaissance. So we had one in 1300s, and we had another one in the 1800s. And mainly, we're still in that Renaissance. And the end of the 1800s, another 500-year cycle, which is what we're in. So we're going to have some huge advances technologically, enlightenment, rational thinking, which we have not had a lot of, and a lot more awareness, more wholeness of humanity of the Aquarian age, which is a big, big deal in the last couple of thousand years. So where we are is not where we're going to be. And so you're going to see the influence of Pluto and Aquarius with an age of Aquarius and the age of female rising all coming together. So 10 years from now, you will not recognize, you will remember this, but you won't recognize because there'll be so much more advancement in the citizenry. We just have to get through these periods. And the other thing too is that in your own life, I'm looking at my notes so I don't leave, there's so much here. In your own life, that you need to kind of ground yourself here. A lot of people, what I'm finding, a lot of people who will get into my stuff, and I've studied so much and I had wonderful teachers. I was just talking with Judy that I studied the Kabbalah years, golly, 80s, 90s, used tough stuff, but it was the basis of so much. And then you begin to study ancient. I attended a conference via Zoom on ancient civilizations. So a lot of what you're hearing about the news is like people who don't know really ancient history, because nobody really, if you go back to what was going on in ancient history, you wouldn't, it's crazy who says this is my land and you don't belong here, go home, get out. And it's ridiculous. And once you understand some of the ancient history of that area, and I had done a lot of it because it was so tied into a lot of ancient knowledge, that you see that Levant and all the land there it's a result of the Ottoman Empire and the ending and other power plays going on and artificial boundaries. And so these things are all playing out. Don't get too disturbed. This will all pass. It's easy to say. But once you can, if you cannot get so attached here, it's easier. What happens is we come in and we get very attached, and then we forget that our job was to know what we wanted, not how to do it. What did we really want? And it's easier to focus on, well, how am I going to get this done? Or how's this going to work? Or how am I going to pay this bill? And we don't go into the invisible world, which is really where we belong, and work with it. And so we dabble. I just feel, particularly in America, because we like to move. We like to push things forward. We're impatient. Fives are very impatient people. And we want to keep on the move. Change is good and all that kind of stuff. But change can be destructive. So we want constructive change. We want to work with emotional energy. We want to make wise choices. We don't want to dabble. And right now, a lot of people are dabbling, and they're not really doing the harder work, which is the trust of the invisible world that sent you in, understanding more about how that works, and your own blueprint and your own program and path and what's possible in it, and what are the wounds of the prior lives it's all there. When I started this, and I go back to when I was visited, I just started to do people's charts, like I thought this was amazing. And I just, if you sat next to me, I'd do your chart, I'd say it was so incredible. And it was so, how could that be? But once you understand language more and the beginning of language and how sound created forms, which that's really everything is sound and light. And once we can travel at the speed of light, we can then see everything. Right now, we're in the dark. We can't, because we don't know how to travel at the speed of light. But that doesn't mean we won't, but not through this cycle. And we're not. And it's not about going to Mars, although that's what you can learn is other things as you go over here to learn this, because you think your goal is that, but it was always over here with something else. And so that's how we learn and discover, and we move forward, and we become more united as a people, which is really the Aquarian age of the it's always high tech. So what happens, another quality of this age is detachment. So you people are forgetting, as we come out of a prior age, which is the age of Pisces, the teaching tool was fear. So a lot of us have reincarnated with a lot of fear. And we have a situation where we're trying to overcome fear through rational thinking and enlightenment, but we're really deeply motivated by fear. Fear of missing out, fear of not having enough, fear we're too old, fear blah, 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 blah. All fear. And so as we move forward into this age of Aquarius, which is an air sign, so it's about ideas and theories and, again, thinking, mind. So you have a lot of mind stuff, a lot of mind cultures. But we have to build on the shoulders of what we were on, and that was the teaching tool of fear, and that was the emotional period of Pisces. So we don't want to lose the emotions. We want to learn how to handle them better. And we want to really move forward into the Aquarian age, the age of enlightenment, and it requires detachment. So a lot of people feel very lonely. One of the things about America when it was formed, remember I said it came under a 5 and it's brought to assimilate and develop the rights of an individual. Remember, the Aquarian age is the rights of the individual in the collective. So we can't just be the collective and we can't just be the rights of the individual. It's the rights of the individual in the collective. And so we're trying to get this right. Well, so we're like a huge world experiment here. So you hear, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, go out and get a job, and all these things, if you notice, America has very, very little social safety net because you're supposed to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And that's how that individual, you're an individual. I have individual rights. Get off my lawn, And so we have to learn, how do we do that in a collective thinking? So it's pretty interesting, but it can be very lonely. And then you get the age of Aquarius, everybody's on their phones, nobody's really talking. And you say, wow, but they don't know the greater good is to learn telepathy. And so that doesn't help me today when I'm feeling lonely. And so we date through apps and we date through detachment. But people long for that community. So we don't abandon the sense of community. We have to learn how to integrate community in the Aquarian age, which is really, that's another thing we're going through. But the 2, remember, 2 is not 1. We've come out of the 1900s and the 1800s, all these 1s. Now we're in the 2, which is a feminine number. So we're ruled now more under a feminine impulse and a feminine conscience. So you're riding the ride of women's rights and women of fact, women, female physicians. There's a lot of women who don't want this. They want to stay in the past. So what you're seeing too with the abortion issue, women have the rights to their own body. And then they say, oh, no, they don't. So the anti-abortion group is going to rekindle itself and try during the next 6 years to rekindle. But again, it's based on the old. It's not the vision for the future. So you want to have the vision for the future. Don't get caught in the past. Don't let them bring you down. Keep the high watch and keep moving forward and continue to be out there with a vision for the future and working on that rather than getting bogged down on social media and podcasts. People say, why don't you have a podcast? I don't want a podcast. I want to be a guest on a podcast. I don't, I've been asked to do, and then have a following and then wow. But that is something where it's certainly nice. It's nice to be thought of, but you don't, take it with a grain of salt. Do your own thinking, make your own decisions, choose. Universe loves a made-up mind, then it can help you. If you do not choose, it can't do anything really. It can throw a lot of stuff at you. Is this what you want? Is this what you want? But it can't do your thinking for you. So there's many levels of consciousness out of here, but here it's very horizontal, if you notice. There's another cycle that I mentioned to you, and that's the soul cycle, what happens to each of us every 7th birthday, starting at age 7. Every 7th birthday, you will download what you learned and imprint your soul with this information as you move to another level of consciousness. So we accumulate. So by the time you've done 7 soul cycles or 49, you are, how shall we say, integrated enough to begin to free yourself in your 50s from all the shoulds of your life that you came in with and that you accumulated for the first 50 years. So 5, or the age of 50 to 60, are what I call the freeing years from your shoulds. And then you begin to go into your mature years in your 60s. So we'll call that the second part of middle age up until your 90s. So you need to have a plan from 60 to 90, and almost nobody I speak to has a plan. They're just going to retire, and then they're going to go take care of the grandkids, or they're going to do a lot of volunteer work, which is great. What's your plan? What's the lifestyle you want? So 30s, up to 60, everybody they know what they're going to do from 30 to 60, but they haven't a clue the second half of their life. So that's very, very important. Imprint every people say that you can't change. Of course you can change. In fact, that's the only currency you really have here is change. You think things are going to stay the way they are? No, they're not. No. And you're not in control. You're in direction. You can direct it, but you can't control it. So just as you think you're going off to, you just got all this money or you just got this, and then you get this pain and you get investigated, you got stage 4 kidney cancer. What are you going to do now? So you're not really in control, but you want to live every day as that you're so grateful that you have it. Like, I'm very grateful I got asked to even speak tonight. That's terrific. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate the fact that I can share information I've accumulated in my life. And I look back now and I see all the mistakes I made. And then I look at what I learned. And I'm so glad I imprint every 7th birthday. So it goes with me when you get out of here. You take only what you learned. You take all your senses with you. Your smell, taste, touch. It all goes with you. The only thing you leave are your flesh, bones, and your clothes. And then you go. And inside of this instrument or this body that I have, sits the etheric body and the astral body. And I'm out of here once I take my last breath. So you go through the earth, the air, the fire, the water. You have to leave each element as you get out of here, even if you're shot by a gun. Each element, the body first, then the fire, and then the water, and then the air, which is the breath. It all goes. So you want to be really cognizant of your life and invest it versus spending it. Invest your time well, because you can't get it back. That's why I said at the beginning of this, I'm so grateful I got asked, because you invested your time with me for my time here, and because you can never get the hour that you just gave me back. And think of everything you do, whether it's lunch with a person or coffee. Is this the best investment of my time and energy? And so everything should be evaluated on what is the best investment of your energy and time, and then last is money. So working with the invisible world is a whole lot easier than trying to do everything yourself. But that requires energy, support, belief, trust, faith, and understanding you're going to go home. This is your tourist. I always call it you're another tourist. And when we have reached a level of consciousness where instead of you read it, Bob Jones, one of us was killed in an auto accident. If once people start writing one of us along with Bob Jones's death, then we have reached a level of consciousness that we have not been in many, probably thousands of years, because we don't think of one of us, And so it gets into some really interesting stuff. I'm blessed that I was exposed to, well, you name it. But I always stayed off of drugs of any kind. I always knew when I was young, you don't alter the electrics up there, leave it alone and let it, I always felt that there was some kind of, I don't know, higher something working with me, but I never knew until I had that visit. And then preceded by other visits and other experiences that are certainly unusual, but they're true. And but it kind of allows you to understand you're not working here on your own. You also, when we reincarnate, there's another soul that is with you that also is not in body form, but is there to learn how to assist. So stays with you until you take your last breath. So even if you're murdered in an alley, stays with you until you take your last breath. And right up to the end is learning from you, tries to assist you, but can't interfere. But so we're really never alone here. And it's a different way of thinking. So I'm going to open this to Q&A. And if you want to, whatever you would like me to address, I'll pull from my magic box here. And
Thank you. Thank you, Gail. That's how wonderful Wonderful that is. If you have questions, go ahead and type them in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you want to speak with Gail directly. I can unmute you. There was a question coming in from the YouTube watchers. Andrew wanted to know if you do you see any current politicians who are oriented toward the future?
No, I mean, there probably are. I try not to stay too follow all the politicians. Really, I mean, I'm aware of them because I read a lot. I even get the Wall Street Journal every day. I mean, that's very conservative, but I also look at, I look at the geopolitical stuff. There are people there, but the other thing too is very important that women gear themselves up to lead and women learn what leadership is. And I always say women need to learn the language of the street.
Mm.
You know, not stop being so nice and don't be a bitch, but be strong, like a Pelosi strong. She's strong, but she's smart and confident. So develop that, whatever you have to do to develop. But we need more women who will step forward.
I think a lot of that is like you said, sort of getting out of the conditioning, right? The conditioning to be nice and the conditioning to take care of others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll always be the conscience. So it's, but we don't have to apologize just to pass the salt.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, would you please?
We were talking about systems, and I was reminded of one of the things that drew me to Barbara Marx Hubbard's work was this idea of, she would say that our crisis is a birth. These crises that we're experiencing, it's a birth of a new humanity. I think that, people talk about that a lot. And it sounds like that's what you're pointing to, right? This it's evolution, right? It's our evolution of our systems. It's evolution personally.
It's a natural process. It's happened forever. And understand that the life you are now living is it's the placenta of the next life. So you need to live this life well because you're in already preparing for the next one while you're living this one.
I love that so much. So I'm like, okay, wow.
Yeah. Think of that one.
Yeah, think of that.
People are always looking outside of themselves for something that's sort of like, well, isn't that nice? What does that mean? So I try to bring everything down to much more grounded. And, it's nice to say that we're birthing to a new, we are, but it's been going on forever. And we're really returning to what we used to be or what humans used to do.
She used to cite the work of Ilya Prigogine, the Prigogine effect, that he talked about systems. I'm going to really simplify this, but that it was, in chaotic systems, they reach a certain level of chaos, and then they can self-organize very quickly at the next level of organization.
Well, if you intellectualize that, just look at schools of fish or birds, and it looks like they're all flock, and then all of a sudden they're in formation. And there's in trading, there was what we call the chaos theory of trading. So there's nothing, it looks chaotic. It's only because we don't know how to put that in. There is an order to everything. Otherwise, we'd have planets crashing into each other all the time. And,
yeah,
I
know that just gives me some solace to think that there's, of course, there's more going on than we can possibly know.
Yeah,
and
true.
And it's okay. So Naomi, I'm just going to get into a big question. Naomi wants to know what about the blueprints of countries, right? So especially where there is a lot of chaos right now, Israel and Palestine, Russia and Ukraine, Yemen. Have you looked at the soul blueprints or the spiritual blueprints of those areas? And
which blueprint do you want to take? Because there's many. You want to take the current state of like Israel when she was formed back in, I think, 48? Or do you want to go back to the original of when the Phoenicians landed on the shores and became eventually the Palestinians? But there was originally the Phoenicians. And then you look at these lands that are Israel, which is not the Israelites, is modern day Israel, is different than the Israelites. And then you have the Levant, which had all this land. So where would you go? You know,
Exactly.
which
So
one do you
where
want
do
to
you
use? And all
begin?
these artificial countries, because the British came in and ran the show for a long time and gave these countries these artificial times. And that's part
And
of the
that's
issue.
true of Russia and Ukraine as well. I think that's sort of a theme, right? Of
It's
kind
a
of
theme, yeah, because whoever gets in power, let me take this over. So that Russia is trying to reclaim, again, going back to the past, trying to take something that was from the past, using the past methods. And it's a matter of time. And then we had a president here who was very reluctant to really do anything right, Biden, with certainly not a very good thinker in foreign policy. Um, so which to learn the blueprint of a country is very challenged in the Middle East, and many of these countries, so they're all territories,
Mhm.
artificial boundaries, artificial made ups. So the blueprint of of one country is a lot of challenges in Israel's chart, the modern day Israel, which is different than the original Israelites.
Mhm.
And the Israelites didn't have all those rabbinical laws that were formed after the temple fell. So you go back to say 150 AD and you go back and now we have all these rabbinical laws. But if you go back to the original Israelites, it wasn't that way.
Mhm.
So it's really a rabbinical order. It gets really into the weeds if you want to get into that. It's
I
very
was,
hard to
I
do
mean,
it.
you
Very
can
hard.
apply that to the United States, like the sort of artificial boundaries of states, right? Artificial, I mean, is that something that we are
Well, we
also?
formed a nation. I mean, everybody kept coming here. We formed this nation. We formed a revolution, right? And then we formed from that. The ending is we beat the British. And we formed a nation out of that, which basically we threw out the Indians. But we still formed the nation at that time rather than 1600s. We did it in whatever 1780s. I always feel it starts around 1780, with the Revolutionary War going on. We were born in war,
Mhm.
and it's common for us to have coming revolutionary periods to go get anything done.
Yeah.
So we do this every 50, 80 years. And we protest. We like to protest. You get, make a party of it.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter or, gay and lesbians, what have you. I mean, it's kind of America. It's this big try to assimilate pot.
Mm.
Very, it's an interesting, 5 is a fascinating number to watch. And
So you are ultimately hopeful,
me,
are
you mean
you?
hopeful? Am I
Yeah.
hopeful? Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, living through it it's like getting a bad diagnosis and the treatment's awful.
Mhm.
That's what it's like. And then you try to really, kind of detach enough from it or it'll just bring you down. But at the same time, keep getting the word out, keep doing whatever your focus is to improve a situation. Because this is that whoever was going to lead would have an awful time, and he will too.
Yeah.
So
And as far as the um because a lot of in the spiritual communities, right? We're talking about the evolution of consciousness and this kind of golden age that we're looking forward to, right? People talk about unity consciousness and um a time when going back to Barbara Marx Hubbard, she talked about how all of our institutions were founded and created in this fear energy, right? In this energy of dominance and competition and fear of the Piscean age, and that in order to evolve, they have to either crumble or shift their focus to Aquarian values of love and co-creation and cooperation. Does that resonate with you?
well, Aquarian has a negative side too.
Yeah,
It's quite
yeah.
revolutionary.
Mhm.
And it's anarchists. It has
Yeah.
the dark side too. So you always have to get the whole loaf. You don't get a slice. And so you get the dark side of the Aquarian age, but the good side of the Aquarian age is this enlightenment and humanity and all that. But it takes time. And again, understanding, the golden rule is really, how do you want to be treated? That's how you treat others, but we don't really, that's why I meant by one of us, when we can put that in an obituary, it's time. Again, it's what happens right now. We're in this 10-year period of but it's not even 10 years anymore because it's going to be 2025 next year. So say the next 5 years. And then major changes, some events that are going to come about to finish this 80-year cycle. I don't know what they are. I think it's very important that we pay attention to the environment and water and the scarcity of it, and also what Mother Earth does to get rid of her drones and get rid of her negativity. Because it will evolve whether we do it or not.
Yeah, yeah. And it really seems like all signs point to cooperation.
It does. It points to cooperation, harmonizing,
taking care of each other, right? And
taking care of each other. Exactly. We've gotten very far away from it. So they'll help us to come back to it, because we're the catalyst of change for the world. And we come out with all these advancements and things like that, which are fabulous and wonderful and can help. But we have to get our act together so that we can, and we keep exporting it, but we have a person in there now who will try to lead from the past. This typical. It's just typical.
Yeah. It's sort of a hallmark of the
Carter tried to lead the 80s using Roosevelt's old methods. And that, wasn't going there. So, and the other thing, Pluto was in the sign of Capricorn for a long time, and Capricorn is all about corporations and government. So we had to deal with that for 16 years. And so the last 16 years is really 17 now, is dealing with Pluto in Capricorn, which was bedfellows, corporations, and government. So the elite was everything.
Yeah. I have two questions here. Deborah wants to know, what are the countries with the highest spiritual vibration?
Probably, I don't know, but I would say some of the countries in Asia, where you have more of a kind of Buddhist tradition, where you respect nature, where you respect the environment, you respect each other, that you have less greed, but it depends on the leaders of these places. Some of these cultures are really, really ancient. We are not. We're like a new kid on the street,
Yeah.
And we're full of ourselves.
We're very adolescent, right?
We're very adolescent. Yeah. So a lot of us look at us and think we're just crazy, but that's a 5. It's a catalyst.
Yeah.
It goes down the street, throws the grenade in the living room window, and keeps on walking. Right. Nothing happened to the catalyst, but the house is all in flames and everybody's running out, and it's crazy. And that's what we do for the world.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. Well,
we do.
So Steve wants to know, is there a worldwide cycle of spiritual experience? And if so, when would we see a global turning?
Is there a worldwide cycle? Yeah, I just went through them, but they're thousands of years long. They don't happen overnight. I mean, change takes time, and then it's like all of a sudden it goes very slow, and then it's instant.
I think that's the thing we have to remind ourselves, right? Because it does. I think a lot of us are just like, oh my God, this just feels like it's not happening, or it's happening too slow, and that's kind of been the story of humanity.
If you look right now, because of these 2 ages, it look like tectonic plates. If you're in California, you know what that is. One rubs up against the other and causes an earthquake. So one is it's the immovable objects, and one is going to move over it. And that's what the Aquarian age is doing. It is moving over. It is tectonic plates meeting each other. So it's like this. And play it. You want to know what's going on? pay attention to your comic strips and to your movies, because creativity comes first through these people first, through comic strips and movies. That's what's coming. Just like you had Jules Verne, you saw these things coming. The rocket, all the stuff, the space, all what's coming is in the movies and comic strips.
It is incredible to watch what movies are popular through that lens of
Because we couldn't take it. Remember when Cocoon came out, I think in the 80s, and all these light bodies were swimming around a swimming pool and all these old people. But if you had a light body come into your bedroom, you would probably run out the door. I mean, it would freak. But people can take it. So we teach through entertainment. So we teach through a scary movie, or we teach, but that's what's coming.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Really,
it's
really fascinating. Donna Lee wants to know if you have any recommendations for where to get news. Reliable.
It depends. I try not to, there's probably some good blogs. Podcasts. I like to get a variety. I do geopolitical futures, which is the world situation. I get the Wall Street Journal. I want to know what's going on in that level. I also I don't look at news per se. I've learned enough these are sources that they're not mainstream except for maybe Wall Street. But I haven't found anyone that I really want to listen to. There are probably some very good people out there, but I haven't found it's my time, my energy, and I just really find that it will find me.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how it finds me. And either I listen to it, pay attention to it, and then there's no like one source, but there's many sources. I was just going through something the other day, which threw me back to my old classes on the ancient Near East. And so I go maybe lectures of professors who are in that field, and I get more background information on, say, what you have wars going on, why, what's the history of this region. So I don't really have, except for Wall Street, um, I don't really follow any particular, and I get a few subscriptions. I do get a few subscriptions, but they're not mainstream stuff at all, you know.
Jan recommends something called Tangle, is a news source that offers both, I guess, both perspectives. So,
Yeah, there's institutions which you can subscribe to and get some pretty great ideas. The American Enterprise Institute is pretty conservative, but they give you a lot of information for basically really just being a subscriber, the American Enterprise, and you will see a lot of people who get on TV from that, but it's a huge list of different essays and things. And then also some of these others that, like the Atlantic I like the Atlantic,
yeah.
Some of the articles there. They have a very good one on how we've destroyed the higher education system here and why it doesn't work. What's going on in the colleges and all that. It's very good. And of course, I guess I had so many years of working with very unusual books and teachers. So I'm kind of like, I'll go back and I'll return to it. Um, I'll return to these teachers. Like one of the books that you may want to read about is called The Lost Star of Myth and Time. The Lost Star of Myth and Time. It will teach you about the sister star, the companion star, the lost star of myth and time.
Who wrote that?
What is his name? Cruttenden, Cruttenden, I think. Cruttenden. Walter Cruttenden, I think. Because that's not a book that most people will even find.
Right.
It's very unusual information. And you'll get a whole different think of how things come together here. And once you get a different background on all this, you kind of don't pay attention to a lot of the noise. It's a lot of noise,
Mm.
And all this stuff is coming through here. I apologize. But yeah, any other question
Sure.
here?
Um, I don't have any other questions so far, but I want to just maybe by way of closing, I want to make sure people know how they can contact you if because you do personal sessions, right, with
Oh yeah, I
people,
do. Yeah, I do.
their
And
own
I
stuff.
also have a YouTube channel, Gail Minogue on YouTube. And I also do about every 6 weeks, I do a Zoom class. So it's Saturday, it's always at 11, and the next one will be probably mid-January. And I'll be doing about the prognosis for 2025. So
Right.
if you go to my website, gailminogue.com, you can just be a subscriber. You'll get noticed. I don't put out a lot of stuff. I do try to do my YouTube channels and have somebody do that for me. And then I have some plans for 2025 because everybody has a personal year. Um, there you go. Look at that. Lost Star of Myth and Time paperback. Yay, Lana. Thank you. It's definitely not an easy read, but it's a really important read. And you'll not look at things the same way. I think that you'll understand things at a much better level than because a lot of people, a lot of questions are all about, enlightenment and all these things, but you want to stay as grounded as you can in your own program, in your own path. And well, that's what I help you with really is what did you come in with? And so gailminogue.com and then my Zoom program, but you will want to get to the January one. I just did one on November the 9th, and that one is up there. And you may want to, I have that recorded, that's up on my website. And that was all on the effects. So it's more depth of these next this 2020s. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So for anybody, just again, Gail Minogue, GailMinogue.
Right.
All of
.com.
the stuff is up there and the way to contact her as well.
Yes,
So
yes, thank you.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Thank you
you.
everyone
Thank you,
for
Judy.
watching
Thank
and blessings on our collective journey.
you. Okay, thank you. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.